When we have learned, or at least allowed, that our life does not end after death, and we come here more than once, we immediately have many questions. For example, why do we give up the memory of our past incarnations and the world we live in between? Because we want so much to understand who we are and why we are here. To get clues, what to do and how to behave in this life. And not always we can remember everything, even through special practices. Is there a destiny? If so, what are its boundaries? Can we change something? Or are we just weak-willed programs in a complicated game written by someone? To answer these questions, we need to know the path our souls take. From preparation for incarnation to coming back and incarnating again. I received this knowledge from my group of kindred souls when I communicated with them during out-of-body practices. Some questions were answered directly to me, and some were either left unanswered or the memory of it was deliberately blocked for me, because not everything can be revealed to us yet. Besides, there are things that even the very souls with whom I have communicated do not know about. In such cases, I turn on our native human logic and make conclusions based on everything I have seen, heard, and felt. Preparation for the incarnation. When in the world of souls we prepare for incarnation, we have a lot of time for it. More precisely, we are not limited in it at all. No one there is pushing the soul like our parents do. Why are you waiting so long? Get a job. Find a place to live. When are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? The clock is ticking. No. There the soul makes its own decision when to go to incarnation and whether it needs it. Of course, it needs it. Then we'll find out why. And when the soul understands that it's overdue and ripe for a new incarnation, it doesn't rush from heaven to earth at once, but makes some serious preparations consisting of several stages. Choice of experience. First of all, the soul decides what experiences it needs to acquire in order to work through, manifest, and reveal certain qualities and energies. For example, for several lives, I've had such problems such as being short-tempered, impulsive, and fast in making decisions. So, in my penultimate life, where I was a woman, I could sit at the table, throw a kettle at my husband, even in the presence of a guest. And my soul is still working hard with this quality, since in the past incarnations, I was not able to fully do this. Choice of companions. Each soul has its own kindred group with which it lives between incarnations. That's about 10 or 15 souls. And with some of them, you'll go to incarnation together. It may be 2 or 3 souls, 5, but it also happens that you go alone. And then, unfortunately, you must undertake the entire journey alone, which means that you're going to have a pretty hard life. Selecting the scenario. Next, select a life scenario that will impact all your associates. The time in which you will incarnate is chosen, and I don't mean the time that is timed in the maternity ward. You can incarnate in modern times, or you can incarnate several decades or even centuries earlier or later. If, for example, the scenario you want is in the past or the future. I will explain later that there is no linearity of time in the world of souls. There is a colossal and incomprehensible time gap between it and our world. But let's not get ahead of ourselves just yet. Next, you choose the country in which you will incarnate. You choose your gender, your social status, your genetics, your health. Even what tendencies you're going to acquire, and as we know, they decide a lot in our lives. And so, all this solid and fateful package you thoroughly discuss together with your kinship group. Body selection. When all the agreements in your life scenario have been made, you choose your body. There's no such thing that you're being told that you're only going to be a Michael or a Julia. You are offered several options that are best suited for your scenario. Perhaps in extreme cases there is one option, but personally, I've never been informed of such a thing. Body attunement. The next serious stage is the attunement with the future body. When you incarnate, you don't see your body for the first time and feel its energy. No, this body is shown to you beforehand, and not as a set of pictures or videos. You're given, let's say, a live and real 5-dimensional model on which you learn to fully feel your body. And not just at the level of the embryo or when the baby is born, this body is shown to you at all stages of future life: childhood, adolescence, maturity, old age, and up to death. But that's not all. You are also shown your major life milestones, events that will be important, forks of your destiny, for example, how you will meet your love, or situations you should avoid. And not only that, you're shown your whole life. And here, by the way, the famous Deja vu effect, which nobody can explain exactly, in my opinion, has to do with just that. I believe it's an echo of an event that you've already seen. And when it happens in your life, you get attuned to the memory of your soul, and you absolutely feel that it kind of already happened to you. And if déjà vu happens in your life, it is possible to assume that your life develops according to the planned scenario. Incarnation. Well, here we come to the final stage, incarnation into the body. The soul connects with the body through the nervous system. Not through an egg or blood, but through the nervous system, which includes the brain and spinal cord. I've seen this all the time in out-of-body practices. Those vibrations that we feel before we leave the body are the nervous system's reactions to the restructuring of our soul to move to a higher level of reality, to a higher vibration. And that's when the embryo begins to grow a nervous system. That's when the connection occurs. That is, not until the 5th week of pregnancy, when the brain and spinal cord begin to form. But this does not happen immediately. As the embryo develops, the soul can come and go slowly, gradually becoming closer each time. It is a very delicate and sensitive process. It is not until the moment of birth that the soul is permanently in the body. However, in the first years of life, this connection is still fragile. The most important parts of the central and peripheral nervous system are mostly formed, but the functions of the cerebral cortex are still developing. This is why we often hear stories from children in which it is as if they are remembering their past lives or telling us about some very unusual things. But then we grow up, become ossified, our nervous system hardens, and we stop hearing such calls from the subtle plans. From all of this, it is clear that our brain is not the cause of consciousness. Consciousness comes from the soul, and the brain and nervous system are only the transmitters of consciousness. Fate and paradoxes of time. You and I have not yet gotten to how the soul comes back, but our brains are already on fire, asking pressing and burning questions. And how is it possible to see our whole life, down to the details, if we haven't lived it yet? That is, since we have been shown the body, the whole scenario by which we are to live, it follows that it all already exists? And it exists in a finished form from beginning to end. So, my life history, the history of others, the history of all of humanity, it's all already written out from cover to cover? Especially if we can even choose any time to incarnate. These are very difficult questions for our understanding, and the answers to them do not fit our logic in any way. Moreover, in the world of souls, either these answers are not given, or I unintentionally forget them when I return to my body. So, either there is a veil of mystery, since being an incarnation, it is better for us not to know it yet. Or it is possible to understand and comprehend this information only on the level of the soul, and our brain is just not capable of it. Therefore, I have to turn on our human logic and make certain conclusions based on the experience and knowledge that were available to me. And so, as it has been already said, time in the world of souls and time in our reality are not connected in any way. They exist separately from each other. There is a chasm between them. For example, after death, you can incarnate the very next day, but you will have been there for 1,000 years before that. And I have come to the conclusion that our reality, our physical universe, which I call the first energy level, is a finished book. Yes, all the pages are written in it, from the beginning to the end. From the birth of the universe to the very last point of its existence. Or, as is now popular, it can be represented as a complex program, which itself is static. Just as any computer game is static, in which time itself does not flow, but it creates the illusion of it as we go through it. Also, on our level, time is just an illusion. And when we incarnate, we create the illusion of the flow of time of life, from infancy to old age. But in reality, we are simply moving within an immobile program. This leads to another interesting conclusion. If I exist in a program where everything is already planned out, then the path I've taken is set, and the one ahead of me is already there, waiting. So it turns out that any other soul can choose my own life and follow me, and I can follow another soul. And we live the same life with, for example, a second difference. As I said, it is quite difficult to understand and fit into the logic of our human experience. But back to the question that plagues us, is there a destiny after all? It can be said this way, yes and no. Time of incarnation, country, gender, parents, genetics. It is, of course, fate. There is nothing we can do. The plot of our life is also fate. After all, we have already seen it from beginning to end, and here a surprising and reassuring fact presents itself. The fact is that when we go here for incarnation, one of the most important tasks the soul faces is to change its destiny. Again, there is a paradox that is difficult to understand. Everything is prescribed, everything is known, but we come here to change it. You could say that when we come to incarnation, we have, shall we say, a certain code, a key that can change this program from the inside. You can't change it from the outside, but you can change it from the inside. So we have two choices. The simplest one is to live our lives without our interference. As the proverb says, it's our birthright. To go with the flow, not to struggle with difficulties. However, the same cannot be said for the soul. Living solely by going with the flow would likely result in an unfulfilled life. While it may offer some experiences for her, it may not lead to growth. But if we want to achieve better results for our soul, then we must intervene in destiny and change it. Take, for example, such a devastating disease as alcoholism. Yes, a person is genetically predisposed to it, plus the complex peripetias of life. One may not fight this addiction and walk, or rather crawl along this destructive path to an early and painful death. Or, for example, suicidal people who have been placed by life in circumstances with which they could not cope. Yes, the soul knew beforehand that it had to leave life in such sad ways. So that's why it comes with this code, which allows a person to pull himself together and change the plot of the script he's written, and it can be changed dramatically. Already from these examples, it is clear that it is even possible to significantly shift the moment of one's death. But in any case, one should not forget that all this works, of course, in the opposite direction as well. That is, one can worsen one's fate, up to and including premature death. Therefore, it is not so important what was written in the script. At every moment, you should try to be a conscious master of your own destiny. And so, among the souls in their world, it is considered high-flying when a soul interferes with its script and changes it for the better. I have not been present on such occasions, but it is thought that upon its return, it is greeted with a standing ovation. Fluctuations of fate. But then a reasonable question arises. If we can influence our own script, how does this affect the lives of others who are connected to our script and who also have their own script? Have we overcome our personal difficulties and thereby changed the lives of everyone around us? Have done something global and significant in the world, and billions of scenarios have cracked at the seams, and the whole program hangs out? Other people's destinies will indeed change. By changing our own scenario, we create certain fluctuations of other destinies. That is, fluctuations, deviations, changes. In principle, we can even greatly alter the course of history, but we shouldn't worry about that. And the program, moreover, will not freeze up. The point is that all these fluctuations return to normal after some time. That is, we have stirred up this book of reality, but afterwards, all the letters will fall back into place. When I found out about the period of quiescence of such waves of fluctuations, I came to the conclusion that by earthly standards, it lasts 200 or 300 years at most, if something significant has happened. That's why those souls that will be following you, or even ahead of you, will still get to the same reality that you have lived through, and they will face the same difficulties and situations that you have overcome and changed. Why do we forget everything? Now we will examine in detail an extremely relevant and troubling question for all of us. Why have we given up the memory of our past lives and lives in the world of souls? First, let's answer about the memory of the world of souls, where we chose our scenario for incarnation. After all, how great it would be to know all the twists and turns of one's destiny. We think. Where to go, where to dodge, where to make a straw. But this is the usual petty human approach. And we need to understand why we come here. We've already said that the soul needs to work through specific qualities and shortcomings here. That's true. But the main thing is that we come here to shake up our energy. Because peace kind of puts the soul to sleep. And it cannot stand still. You can spend at least 1,000 years between incarnations. But still, there will come a moment when you will understand that your energy starts to fall asleep. That you have a kind of contraction, compression. And in order to wake up, you will want to incarnate again, and it will be a sincere desire, not an imposed obligation. In the world of souls, there is no static at all. You can either degrade, lose your energy, or on the contrary, evolve and go to even higher levels, which we humans cannot even imagine. This is why we come here, to this complex and often cruel world, to release and revitalize our energy. Through stress, pain, joy, sorrow, happiness, love. Through all these things with which our world is abundantly filled, the energy of the soul opens up and begins to play with new colors. It is like a nuclear reaction when one small proton knocks another out of the nucleus and starts a chain reaction with the release of enormous energy. In the world of souls, there is no such proton that would excite us and start a growth reaction. You could say, it's too good, pleasant, and easy there. But when we incarnate here, all the feelings and emotions, everything that we go through, this is the proton that ignites our energy and gives us a push to development. And each incarnation raises our level of strength and wisdom. But if we remember the whole scenario of incarnation, all our goals and objectives, then the whole game will not be real and will be devoid of any meaning or benefit to the soul. After all, we will know all the rules, all the entrances and exits, every turn and path. At the very least, you will be incredibly bored. But that's not all. Now imagine what would happen if we remembered everything about the world of souls. Remember how beautifully we lived, what amazing worlds we visited, how wonderfully we communicated in the circle of soulmates. What will happen to us? It would be insanely cramped and uncomfortable in our bodies, unbearable from the realization that we have locked ourselves into this cage, and the realization of where we came from and what we left behind. We just can't stand it. Well, how could we give up paradise and come to lock ourselves in a cold, damp room with no windows and no doors, where we can't even lie down? The temptation to get out would be very strong. For these two reasons, all souls intentionally and deliberately give up the memory of themselves and their home. Now suppose we only remember our past lives. That is, we have forgotten the world of souls. We don't know the rules of the game, and there is no temptation to return to the sweet home. So why not at least remember them? I mean, we've gained so many unique experiences in past incarnations. And experience is always a support and useful aid in all situations. Well, let's imagine what your past lives might have been like. Do you think you lived them magnificently, making no mistakes? Were you exclusively kings and princesses, successful, brilliant, rich, and happy individuals, carried by everyone in your arms? Think back to the unpleasant things that occurred in your life, and those you'd wish to replay if given the chance. And even the smallest things often torment us for years or even for life. Now, imagine remembering the loss of all your loved ones from past lives. All the tragic and ugly incidents, all the failures and fears. Imagine unimaginably horrible things were done to you or your family. Or you've done unprecedented cruelty to others. You would be overwhelmed with feelings of pain and suffering, remorse, and a desire for revenge against the descendants of people from past lives. Not only that, but all this will interfere in your life, in your script, and you will no longer be concerned with your own happiness. You will simply and trivially go insane. Your psyche won't be able to handle it. This is why our souls close off access to all memory for the duration of incarnation. Even in out-of-body and regressive practices, when we do learn and remember something, they never reveal to us the information that could shake us and ruin the game called life. And this game should be a real game played by all the rules, where we make all the decisions ourselves and for real. not based on memories, hints, and help from outside. Only in this case, the way in incarnation will be useful and effective for our soul. Afterlife. And so our earthly journey has come to an end. It is time for us to leave our physical bodies behind and return home. That is, we die. Of course, for almost any person, the word death evokes sadness and fear. But now you and I know that there is nothing terrible about it. It is just one of many processes that our soul goes through, and it has to be dealt with in detail because, like the process of incarnation, it also answers many questions. Returning to the world of souls also happens not all at once, but in several stages. Separation. The first stage is separation, when the soul separates from the body. Sometimes the soul does not even notice it. This usually happens when the soul dies unexpectedly, for example, in a dream. And sometimes the soul categorically doesn't want to leave and protests to that. For example, a person was doing well, had grand plans for life, and suddenly died. A very interesting case like this happened a couple of years ago. A young man in his 20s was in the hospital and was about to be discharged. But suddenly there was a drastic complication and he could not be saved. So right after that, for several days, there was a real poltergeist going on in the ward and in the resident's room, just like they show it in the movies. Objects were flying, things were falling out of cabinets, furniture was moving. But the woman doctor who worked there was on top of it and realized that it had something to do with a young man who had died. And then she started talking to him and reading to him my book, The Phenomenon of Out-of-Body Consciousness, which describes the things I'm talking about now. And when she had read almost the entire book, the soul apparently came to terms with it and realized that nothing terrible had happened and she was expected home, because after that, everything stopped. Sometimes the soul does not want to leave because of strong attachments to this world. It is not necessarily fame, power, or wealth. There are attachments to nature, to one's favorite cause, to loved ones. And then the soul stays here. That is how the so-called ghosts appear. These are not fantasies and fictions, but really real. How is this possible? The fact is that everything in the world exists on vibrations. When we raise our vibrations in out-of-body practices, we separate from the body. And when we go down, we go back up. But when the soul wants to come back to this world after death and starts lowering the vibrations, there's no place to come back to. The body is dead. On top of that, it may experience some negative emotions and memories. And that's also low vibration. And eventually it becomes visible in this world and can affect matter. Objects fly and light up, we see some images, but such cases are rare. Usually souls understand that they need to move on. Acceptance of death. What follows is an acceptance of death, a resignation to it. For people who did not believe in the afterlife, separation from the body and acceptance of this fact is shocking and very surprising. But the surprise is pleasant. There is life after death, after all. If you meet such souls before they have returned to themselves, they will simply overwhelm you with questions. They want to know everything and about everything. But for most people, the fact of death is an escape from suffering. This is especially true of old and seriously ill people. There are examples where people have been brought back after clinical death, and they tell afterwards how they didn't want it. They would hang over their bodies and literally scream at the doctors who were fighting their bodies for life. Don't do it. And so when separation and acceptance of the fact of death has occurred, there is a complete return of memory. But not of the world of souls and past lives. It's about this life of yours. You instantly remember absolutely everything that happened to you. Even all your dreams, your early childhood, your lost memory from trauma. When people come back from clinical death and say that their whole life flashed before their eyes, they were just having that experience. The stage of accepting the fact of death is very much related to both the overall experience of the soul and the experience of the person who died. How spiritual he was, how much he knew what was going to happen. If death is a shock to him, such a person is met by kindred spirits. They support him, explain what will happen and where he should go. And very experienced souls, of whom there are not so many, do not need this and fly home. They don't even need the next stage. Farewell. This stage is farewell. As a rule, all souls go through it. After separating, the soul is still in the game. It has not yet regained the memory of why it came here and what will happen next. For such souls, the connection with their nearest and dearest is still important, and they try to make themselves heard somehow, to let them know that they are okay and that they don't have to worry about them. Unfortunately, most relatives are in a depressed state and are not able to hear them, but the souls do their best to say goodbye and calm down. This stage lasts about 10 days. Homecoming. And then, at last, the moment of returning home to the world of souls arrives. But even here, everything happens not overnight, but in steps. First, the soul meets with one of its teachers, mentors, and there is an assessment of the quality of the experience that the soul received in incarnation. Good and bad moments where one could have acted differently, and other, so to speak, impressions of the trip, in our case to the earth, are discussed. Then comes a kind of rehabilitation period, restoration of the former harmony. In any case, the soul has lived a difficult life in the body, even if it was not very hard. The soul's energy is not depleted and does not disappear, but it changes its quality a little, and an imbalance appears. Therefore, it is restored. For some, it resembles a sanctuary of healing, while others describe it as a connection with a source of light and energy. There is a merging with some memories and a harmonious alignment with the third energy level, the world of souls. When the therapeutic procedures are over, there comes the last and most important stage, the merging with the higher self. Let me explain what this higher self is, the one everyone talks about, but no one has ever seen. The point is that when a soul goes to incarnation, it does not leave entirely. It releases a small part of itself, about 5 to 20%, and the rest, the larger part, stays in the world of souls. It is this part that remains that is called the higher self. Sometimes a soul sends not one, but 2 or 3 of its parts to incarnation. It happens because of a strong desire, which all souls have, to return to the source as soon as possible. Let us assume that past incarnations were not very successful. They did not try to change their destiny. They went with the flow, and therefore they returned with little experience, not enough for passing to a higher level. And so, when all the parts are reunited, there is a complete restoration of the entire memory of the soul. All of its incarnations, all of its experiences, all of its life in the world of souls. At the same moment, one comes to a full understanding of why incarnation is necessary and why the rules of the game in it are so harsh. It becomes clear that one cannot help those who are in incarnation from here and interfere in their destiny, because doing so would completely devalue their experience, their path. Our life is a testing ground, a platform for training, where everything has to be real. That's why when our relatives and friends pass away, they don't help us. Otherwise, they would do us a disservice. What's more, it's impossible to change our lives from the outside in. The code, the key to it, is in us alone, and we can change reality, our destiny, only ourselves, from within. The only one who can help us is our higher self. But it is not capital help. They won't stop us by the hand. Events won't change. They won't send us a letter of instruction. If we can build a connection with our higher self, we get easy clues, and most importantly, a boost of energy and inspiration. There is a desire to live, to change our destiny. The world becomes brighter and more beautiful. Therefore, it is very important that a man should not build blocks around himself, not wanting to hear anybody and anything, and be open. Otherwise, the higher self will not be able to reach him. After a soul has become whole, it returns to its kindred group, to its home, and it stays in the world of souls for as long as it needs to mature for a new incarnation. And when you understand what parts of your soul and your energy are lagging behind and need to be worked out, you will sincerely wish to return, and then you will go again all the way from preparation to returning home. The whole long, difficult, and very selfless way. Path to Source. There is a reason why the phrase that all our life is a game is so popular. It does indeed make sense. But the rules and laws of this game, its quests and tasks, are very difficult to comprehend. There are a lot of paradoxes related to the incarnation of souls and the structure of their world. It is useless to try to understand them with your mind. Our logic doesn't help. We can only contemplate, gain experience and knowledge, accept them as given, and try to build a new understanding, a new logic. However, to make it less painful for you, even in the world of souls, they don't fully understand the depth of the whole concept. They don't fully understand what the source is. When I specifically asked how many more levels there are to the source to reach it, the souls told me that they don't know. Therefore, we must take advantage of the fact that we find ourselves in this testing ground, in this harsh game. We have the opportunity to try to comprehend this complex design of Source, which in any case will greatly develop us and push us towards spiritual growth. After all, we have already acquired 3 fundamental and essential knowledge. First, there is no death as such. There is no need to fear it. Death is only a stage in our return home. The second is that we can change our destiny by interfering with the algorithm that has been prescribed for our lives. Third, we are all part of the great source, the path to which we have already set out and will surely reach. And we are not alone on this path. We are all on it.
Hello dear friends, my name is Andrey Shcherbakov, and I want to conclude the movie with my own voice, expressing gratitude to all those who contributed to the film's production and its dubbing process. And I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that all the information you heard today about the soul, about the meanings of incarnation, about the complex questions of time, all of this is impossible to comprehend by logic, human logic. The matter at hand is that human logic lacks enough experience, enough knowledge to effectively filter and sort all of this vast amount of information. All of this can be comprehended through your heart, through your soul, through the power of intuition. You can also use your personal experience, your practice, for example, out-of-body experience. Yes, in order to excel in out-of-body practice, you must dedicate sufficient time for the practice to achieve success and objectivity, but it is indeed possible. You can also employ regression search to investigate your previous incarnations, lives in the intervals between lives. All this will help you comprehend, understand, and get answers to your questions. And of course, we are eagerly anticipating your wishes. What topics would you like us to explore more and create similar films in the future? And of course, our communication does not stop there. We will have many more opportunities to meet with you on TV Extra and at the Awakening Center. See you soon. Goodbye.